Hey everybody, welcome back to the Fawn Pod, the Fawncast. It's friends occasionally not disagreeing. This is Cody, and I'm here with yet another installment in my summer James Bond watch through. I just checked out 1969's On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which is the famous one here because of who played James Bond. We'll talk about all that in just a second. Just want to thank everybody for following along. Friends occasionally not disagreeing. Again, if you think you have a friend that might enjoy us, tell them about us. If you interact with us on social media, well, if you don't, please do. But if you do, give us a share, give us a like, give us a follow us on subscribe, whatever it is that you're listening to us on. We're available everywhere, whatever you're listening to this on, whether that is iTunes or Pandora or Spotify or Amazon or Audible or Stitcher or Podcast Addict, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can also find us on all our social medias, such as Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. We have a website up, www.fawnpodcast.com. And I heard a rumor that somebody may also be taking on YouTube soon. So we'll see if that's yet another area we will delve into. A couple of our hosts, myself and Brett in particular, stretch ourselves pretty thin with the stuff we do behind the scenes to keep this giant empire running for all of you, dear loyal listeners. All right, as mentioned today, we're going to take a look at On Her Majesty's Secret Service. This is the famous movie that Sean Connery is now gone for, and we are bringing in George Lazenby, who I gather was a model. That's what I hear. I think he's Australian, actually. And this is going to be quite a departure from the rugged suaveness of Sean Connery as we get into this new style of Bond with George Lazenby, which I gather he's not an actor. If that's the case, I thought he did really well. I don't know if he has any acting experience before this or not, but I expected this to kind of be a shit show, if I'm being honest. But it wasn't. Spoiler alert. All right, so let's jump into On Her Majesty's Secret Service, scoring along with our Bond criteria. Here we go. Reminder, we're checking out things like the title and the theme, the portrayal of Bond, the villains, the women in the movie, and then, of course, the action and the plot, and then also the favorite line. And I have a lot to say about that one at the end here of our analysis today. So, starting off with, we have On Her Majesty's Secret Service for our title on this one. This is a phrase that's been used, I think, in the other Bond movies so far. This is now the seventh one of these that I have watched, and there's still a lot left to watch after this. But it's nothing in particularly special. Fits the movie fine. Bond has a moment where he threatens to quit, and then he's back, and then he goes off on his own a few times. I don't know that it had particular interest in terms of meaning in this particular movie. So I'm just going to go 3 out of 5. It's fine, kind of describes his role, but not necessarily unique or tied to this particular movie. So 3 out of 5 for our title today. Looking at the theme music for this one, a couple things to say here. Number one, this has an instrumental theme, which we have not had since Dr. No, the very first one, the Bond theme, if you will. We did a thematic instrumental in Casino Royale, the offshoot movie, but I don't really count that in terms of the overall Bond pantheon here of Bond themes. But this is a good one. It is it's got a little emotion behind it. It's got some feels for sure. And this is one that not only works on the intro as instrumental, but they actually weave this back into the movie 2 or 3 times in different scenes. And it's a pretty good theme. So I'm going to go 7 out of 10 on this one, okay? Now, while we're on the topic of music, though, we have to mention that this movie does feature another big song. It's not the theme of the movie per se, although the lyrics themselves are used several times in the movie, and the instrumental for this song is also used several times in the movie, and we get a little bit into the movie, the proper version of the song with the singer. Now, let me mention what this is. The song "We Have All the Time in the World" is kind of a secondary theme in this movie, and it is sung by Louis Armstrong, who just has this wonderful, raspy, pain-staking voice that he has as he's belting out these lyrics. Um, some behind the scenes work with this one's kind of interesting. What I have read about this, I'm not sure how I went down this rabbit hole, but Louis Armstrong, of course, is mainly known for playing instruments. However, at this point in his life, this is 1969, he was too sick to actually play his trumpet. And so he was only able to sing. He wasn't able to play at this time because he was too weak. But they chose him to sing this song because they liked his voice. And it really does match this song fantastically. It kind of reminds me almost of like Johnny Cash, how he can sing a song, and just something about his voice and, his rugged appearance. What we know about him just kind of adds layers to that song. Same thing here, but they also said they cast Louis because they thought it was ironic, I guess. I don't know if this is nice or not, but they said they thought it was ironic to have him, while he was sick, sing the song "We Have All the Time in the World." And it's a beautiful song. His rendition is beautiful in this. He doesn't sing a lot because, like I said, a lot of times played in the movie, it's just the instrumental version that's played. So you get a bonus song in here with that one. It's not the main theme, so I can't rate it for that, but you do get a pretty good Louis Armstrong song in here as a secondary theme, which not reflected in the number, but there it is. All right, Bond Portrayal is next, and this was maybe the one thing I was most excited for this movie because I have never seen this, and I only have seen George Lazenby in pictures as Bond. Obviously, this is his only movie, so I've never seen him in action before. He has kind of this boyish charm about him. He's very good at facial expressions, whether he's trying to be wry or joking or angry or whatever. So his range is actually pretty impressive in this. If this is really the only thing he has done, and I didn't research that, but if he's a model, not an actor, I thought he did really well. He can pull off sadness, and he can pull off being vulnerable more than Connery can, simply because Connery, it's outside his range. He's this scruff, tough dude who's not going to take any crap from anybody, and he can't come across as believable here as Lazenby can. So I actually thought he did a really nice job. So I gave him a 12 out of 15 for that, which is just about average looking back at the prior movies here. It's about an average job as Bond. On to the women of this one. Well, it's another one where Bond has several interactions. We'll talk about the plot here in a little bit, but he beds a few ladies in this movie, but he is particularly smitten with a lady named Tracy. And Tracy is played by the wonderful Diana Rigg, who I had a crush on as a kid watching reruns of the Avengers, not the Marvel Avengers, but the British Avengers detectives, the two of them, John Steed and Emma Peel. And she's always kind of had a spot on my heart since then. So seeing her in this as the Bond lady was a pretty exciting thing for me. She has some moments where she's capable, whether that's skiing or driving, or even has a couple of moments where she fights her dad, fights Blofeld, fights some of the other little minions in the movie here. She's absent for a lot of the film, and we do get a little bit of sense of who she is, even the opening scene, which is kind of getting into the plot, but she parks her car after she almost drives Bond's off the road, and she's going to walk out into the ocean and commit suicide is where she's at, because I guess she didn't feel like she had a reason to live at that point. So that's where she was. And she comes full circle to the end, to where she actually marries Bond. We'll talk about that in the plot here in a bit. So other than the fact that she's absent for large chunks of the movie, she was a compelling character. And obviously fairly good looking as well. So I gave her a 10 out of 15, which is about average again in this category, I would say so far, based on who we have. All right, villains in this movie. Well, this is interesting. I didn't know this was coming either. So we have Blofeld back from You Only Live Twice, the head of Spectre. He's back here again as the villain in this movie. Again, not necessarily revealed to be the villain in this movie until a little bit later. Apparently, he's reopened shop in the Swiss Alps here with some kind of allergy retreat. Talk about that in a second. He is mostly absent for the first half of the film. He comes in the second half of the film and actually does have some decent fight scenes with Bond when they're going downhill. We'll talk about that more in a second here. But in general, 7 out of 10. I mean, kind of a bizarro plot in this one in terms of the actual evil genius plan that he has. But here's the interesting thing. I didn't realize that Telly Savalas, who is playing Blofeld here, was playing the same character that Donald Pleasance did in the last movie. I've seen pictures of Telly Savalas in Bond before. I did not realize he is also playing Blofeld. So this is kind of bizarre because in the plot, at first, James Bond is undercover at Blofeld's retreat in the Alps, and they don't recognize each other. Or Bond maybe knows that it's Blofeld, I guess, when he gets there. I guess Bond does know, but it's just kind of weird, like, to see the villain doesn't know who the hero is because he's undercover, even though they just fought in the last movie. Except for the viewer, this is bizarre because we have a different actor playing James Bond and we have a different actor playing Blofeld. So there's a little bit of suspension of belief here in that you have to kind of, take this all in and wackadoodle world here and just say, okay, different guy for this, different guy for that, but somehow they're, I don't know. That part was a little shaky to me, and that's not really the fault of the movie because Connery was done, so Lazenby took up on this one and then famously said he'd only do this once. And I believe actually I was incorrect in prior podcasts. It sounds like Connery's coming back for the next one. So I'll have to check that out. But it's just kind of weird, as you're the viewer to see the main hero and the main villain of this, not only movie, but the entire series, the entire chronology played by different people. So anyway, 7 out of 10 for the villains in this one, Blofeld. All right, on to the plot and the action. 30 points for the plot and 15 for the action. Let's start with the plot. We have James Bond falling in love, long story short here, with basically a crime syndicate's leader's daughter, kind of like the mafia, I guess, more or less. And the mafia is played as almost heroic in this movie, which is kind of weird because Bond even says, like, you do some things against the law, but at the same time, the mafia boss wants Bond to marry his daughter, who is Tracy. And also helps him find where Blofeld is and comes up with this plan with Bond to get him into this allergy retreat that Blofeld is operating at the top of the Swiss Alps, where he has, I think, a dozen girls who are all, of course, pretty good looking. They're all kind of like house prisoners till they get their allergy cured. But surprise, you'd never guess this. Blofeld is actually using mind control to try to have these ladies become secret sleeper agents for him out in the world. And then he has this plan to basically infect everybody with bacteria and conquer the world unless they pay him a ton of money. Yeah, type thing. Bond ends up at the retreat. Again, long story short here, he has to infiltrate the place. So, I mean, of course, he's going to find a way to sleep with a couple of ladies while he's there. Never mind the fact that he is in love with Tracy earlier in this movie, but that's, you got to do what you got to do for the country. He is on Her Majesty's Secret Service, I might add. But I digress. Eventually, he has to escape from the retreat. He's posing as a what's the word? Genealogist? Is that the right word? where he's looking for the family history of Blofeld because Blofeld wants the title of, I forget, Baron, I believe. It's Baron or Count, one of the two he wants to try to prove. And this is the way for Bond to sneak in undercover. One of Bond's friends tries to get into the retreat, and this tips off Blofeld that something may not be as it seems. He puts Bond as a prisoner, and eventually they come, the mafias, in their helicopters, posing as the Red Cross, no less. You can't make this up. The Italian mafia posing as the Red Cross with fully armed helicopters going to attack what's labeled as an allergy retreat, which is actually a secret base in the mountains. They blow the shit out of the base, and Blofeld escapes before it blows up. Tracy escapes. She was being held prisoner there. Bond escapes. And then we get this extended sequence here, I have to say. There's some skiing sequences and things that take place in here also. But we get this pretty cool scene with, I guess I don't know if it's the luge or the skeleton or the toboggan or what the correct terminology would be here, but Bond and Blofeld, Lazenby, and Savalas are fighting as this thing is going downhill at pretty good speeds. There might have been some stunt actors used in this, but it's an extremely long trail that they take down this huge hill, and there's actually some pretty good scenes going on. I mean, they're fighting, they're punching, they're kicking, they're pulling. Bond's head and helmet gets scraped along the side of the mountain pretty intently. You know, this is a sport that if you've ever watched the Winter Olympics, all those ones where they go downhill super fast, you know, there's incredible danger with that. And I have seen some Winter Olympics myself in the past on TV, and just like, regardless if it was them or stunt actors for part of it or what, this had to be a pretty dangerous scene that they filmed. So I wonder if this was part of Lazenby being like, nope, not coming back to this. Not so sure. But a pretty good fight scene here. As I mentioned, there's another little fun scene where they're skiing down the hill. This is Bond and Tracy trying to escape Blofeld and his men. And this was a little bit earlier in the movie. An avalanche comes and triggers, basically wiping out some minions and also Tracy and Bond. And that was how Tracy got captured, P.S., from earlier on. And Bond is able to escape, of course, and then he hooks back up with the mafia, and then that's when they came with the helicopters, yada yada. So this one kind of ends with something that has not happened in a Bond movie so far, which is the dad was trying to pay Bond, I think, £1 million or something, to basically love his daughter, pay attention to her, get married to her, etc., because he wanted her to be happy since she was uber depressed about life. Bond said he'd do it earlier in the movie, and then the dad goes to give him the money here now, and Bond rejects the money, just says he loves her. He's fallen in love with somebody for the first time, and there's a wedding that takes place, and it's not overly long, 5 minutes maybe, but it's kind of interesting. They have Q and M there, and Moneypenny comes, and she's always flirted with Bond in all the prior movies, and she's bawling her eyes out because he's getting married, of course. He's off the market, if you will. And they have a nice little ceremony, and there's lots of lovey-dovey stuff going on. They drive off in the car along the seaside, and I genuinely thought this was going to be a happy ending, which I was very curious how they were going to lead into the next movie with this. And a truck goes by cheering them on because they have all the like adornments and decals and stuff from the wedding still on their car. And as they get out to get all the flowers, Bond gives them all to Tracy on the driver's side, and she has a rose in her mouth, and she looks all pretty and stuff. They get back in the car, and then another car goes by, and this one has Blofeld and the lady who ran the retreat for him, the allergy retreat, one of his underlings, I guess. And they have a machine gun that they open up fire on. Of course, it hits the car as it goes through. Bond is assuming everybody's okay, and he looks over to Tracy and realizes a bullet had gone right through the front windshield and hit her in the head, essentially, and killed her on the spot. And another guy who's Bond's friend pulls up next to him at that point and says, you know, like, is everything okay? Or what can I do for you or whatnot? And Bond is kind of beside himself. It's kind of interesting. He has lost touch with reality in this moment, and he just keeps holding on to Tracy's hand, and when he sees her wedding ring, and just keeps saying, "We have all the time in the world," and that song had been echoing several times throughout this movie. And I have to say that scene in particular, more than any scene so far in any of the Bond movies, kind of gave me a shiver. And I actually am shivering right now just re-saying this again, but there was more emotion in that one scene of them getting married to her being killed than there has been in any Bond movie so far through this stretch. That's not, I don't think that's George Lazenby's ability. He's just the one who happened to be lucky enough to be in this particular scene, but that he had finally admitted he loved someone and meant it apparently, and was going to marry them, and then to have that taken away from him. I don't think we're going to get deep character development on Bond through these movies. But if we did, and if we do going forward somehow, that would be a really scarring experience, and I would think create a different Bond altogether. I don't think we're going to get that because it sounds like we have another Connery movie and then we're headed off into Roger Moore land. But it was really a touching moment, and I felt genuinely bad. All the people that die in these movies, I really did feel bad for Bond at this moment. So the plot, kind of ridiculous. I gave it a 20 out of 30 on this, but the action in the movie, I actually thought the action in the movie, particularly those downhill sequences, I thought was the best action I have seen so far in these movies. So I did give it 14 out of 15 for action. It has some slower parts, but I think in terms of raw action, this movie had the best stunts and the best actor work in those moments. So 14 out of 15, the highest action award so far in these movies. Okay, scoring here, we got 14, 27, 10, 12, 7, and 3 gives us a grand total for On Her Majesty's Secret Service of 73 points, which is going to make this a classic by 3 points. Whew. Also makes it our third highest scoring movie behind From Russia with Love and You Only Live Twice. So On Her Majesty's Secret Service is number 3 currently out of 7 movies at the moment. Now, our favorite line here, there were a lot of good lines in this movie, but one moment stuck out to me, and it's right before they're going to play that intro theme song credits. Kind of they do the opening scene and they cut to do the theme song for the movie, whichever movie it is. But right before that, George Lazenby does something that hasn't really happened yet in these movies, other than maybe Casino Royale. I can't remember. But he turns to the audience, to the camera, and he breaks the fourth wall. And this was like a lady who he was trying to seduce. And if I recall right, she was like, well, let's do it tomorrow or something. And Bond was kind of thinking like, that meant, oh, we're going to stay the night together. But in fact, she like shuts him down and he gets rejected. And he looks at the camera and he just simply says, "This never happened to the other fellow," which was so on point and so funny. It's just self-referential that they're going to talk about Connery being gone and the differences with this guy and the other guy. I mean, he goes on to, score more than his fair share of ladies in this movie as it keeps going. But I thought that was a hilarious way to intro the movie and instantly recognize, like, I'm not the same guy that you've seen here. I'm somebody else. So I thought that was pretty funny. And breaking the fourth wall, it's interesting choice there just because it's not something these movies have done. But I thought that was a really fun line as well. Okay, well, that is going to wrap us up here on Her Majesty's Secret Service, which is the 7th one. Next, we're going to go from 1969 to 1971, so 2 years later, and we're going to take a look at Diamonds Are Forever, which, again, I gather is Sean Connery back, which I didn't realize as well. I mean, you can tell if I make mistakes in anything I'm saying here, it's because I've never seen these movies. So that's where we're headed next is 1971. We got 5 movies in the 70s to check out next here. It's going to be Diamonds Are Forever, Live and Let Die, The Man with the Golden Gun, The Spy Who Loved Me, and Moonraker. Those are the 70s movies we have coming up. So I'll get to those shortly, and we'll go from there. So another short episode for us all here. I believe I'm going to drop this probably on Thursday. And it sounds like we are scheduled to come back on Monday for all of you with another full host smorgasbord as we're going to talk about our mid-year report card, essentially, for 2023, going back to some of our lists we were excited about at the beginning of the year, as well as maybe talk about a few topics in the news and in the future of the world. So this is going to be a mishmashy one coming up, and I'm pretty excited to be a part of. Like I said, we have some other hosts involved in this one, kind of back to our normal format, okay? That is it. I guess I just want to say in closing, again, thank you to Brett and Miranda for covering, Brett and Unnamed Wife. Apologies. For covering that week that I couldn't make this happen. And, it's hard to squeeze these in sometimes to watch or study or research the content we have every week and then come up with an episode for all of you. So I hope our effort is worth it for all of you out there. It's hard to believe we've done as many of these as we have at this point. This is just kind of something we started to do, to try. And it does take a lot of work. I mean, this is a big imprint weekly in my life at this point. But it's nice because I get to talk to all of my friends that I've met through the years and have stayed in touch with, and, see one of them one week and a couple other ones the next week. And not that I wouldn't talk with them anyway, probably through social media, but this is just a nice way to see them and to actually talk to them and kind of get some of our thoughts out on things that are happening around us. So I hope you all enjoy as well. Until next time. Take care of yourself. This has been another episode of the Fond Pod, the Fond Cast. This has been Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing. This is Cody, and we'll see you on Monday. Take care.